keep it alive. Through these lines I write, I keep it live cause I thrive. I might just blow your mind tonight. I'm so hyped, but it's no hype. From this height, it's direct hits on sight. I'm your type, lend me your ears to show you that there's something in me. I'm not giving up, I'm standing right here, holding these days hostage. And I'll make this my year. We turning fear into love, and the love's in the air. I love doing this cause nothing compares. Nothing can share that same type of feeling when you feeling and flare. They can't catch it, it's havoc. I rip to a tear, switch a scenario on stereos, I leave them impaired. Variables start to change and they're all in my range. I just gotta grab it, it's all mathematics. Every step is drastic, I make it fantastic. I'm trying to take your breath away. Asthmatic.
This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo. This is live through the stereo. Go and let it blow, blow through the stereo. I'ma let them know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo, stereo.
Yeah, just nod your head with it, so explicit and vivid. Every image is intricate, intimate. I put my all into it, no scrimmage and no rules. I'm a pro tool, hear my heartbeat, beat into the vocals. I'm so loco, lost my mind, oh no. It's Ponderoso, dope, so no overdose, cause it's dope, yo. Man, this is house grown, mixed with some milestones. So I let the style flow down like the Dow Jones, bringing it with some foul tones, letting the crowd know we getting loud, so it's eardrum rudiments. Yeah, we bring it rude again. Move, little hooligan. Music for tuning in, full time to the 10. I'm on my clock like I told you. I'm doing this for dreams we pursuing.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Anti-Media Radio. Once again with your host Nick Burnaby here on UCY.tv. Thank you guys for tuning in, and make sure you check out our website, theantimedia.org, if you haven't already checked it out, which, I mean, if you're listening to the show, I'm guessing you probably have. So there's a lot of crazy news going on today, and we're going to be joined by our co-host DB in a little bit. Anyway, make sure you guys check out our awesome music intro. Our intro musicians, Ponder and XL, and Ponder's actually going to be coming out with a new album pretty soon, in a month or two, I believe. So we're going to have him back on the show, and he was on our show, I think last year when he released his last album. But it's really awesome, independent music with an actual message. This crap that you hear on this corporate radio, which is what we're all trying to move away from, I guess. Everybody that's listening obviously is looking for a different point of view from what the corporate media is regurgitating to us on a regular basis. And also make sure you guys check us out Monday through Friday. We just added some new shows to go 5 days a week. We've been having a few technical difficulties with the new shows, but of course, like with anything, it's a learning process and it's a growing process. But the shows have been pretty good, I think. So make sure you guys check that out, and Fridays as well, Monday through Friday. So the big news tonight and today, obviously, it's everywhere, 24 hours a day on CNN. It's replaced the coverage of the airplane stuff on CNN now. There was a huge terror attack in Paris, 12 people dead, and there was video. Someone was on the roof and got some video of it in this, pretty horrific scene. And I don't know. What do you guys think about it? Let's talk about this thing, because this is a pretty big topic. I don't know which way to take this. I don't know enough about it. There's not enough known. Supposedly, some breaking info is that one guy got caught. I mean, I don't know if that's true, because this is stuff that is just supposedly breaking news. But there's been various reports earlier that two of the guys had been shot dead by the French police or whatever, and that turned out not to be true. So it's really hard to say. I mean, this is just it's kind of one of those things like the Boston bombing. It's hard to we can't really make any judgment too quickly on this thing that's going on in France, because it's there's such a media frenzy going on, and there's going to be a bunch of facts that come out, and then there's going to be a bunch of facts that don't line up. I mean, this is to me. I mean, it seems very similar to what happened with the Boston bombing, maybe Sandy Hook and all that stuff. Anyway, we're joined on the line by DB Schwartz, our co-host. How you doing tonight, man?
Doing well, man. Just got everything finally hooked up here, and internet's in full effect. And it was crazy because today was France's 9/11, and that's got to be the big story, right?
Yeah, exactly, and that's what we were just talking about. Is that this the facts are coming out so quickly. So the latest thing that I've seen is that one guy turned himself in, and that they're looking for these two brothers. But there was I think it was an NBC News report earlier, and this isn't surprising, but they reported that two of the guys had been shot by the cops in France, but apparently that wasn't true. So that's kind of what I'm kind of hinting at here, is that it's hard to really make a judgment on this, or try to say anything about whatever's going on really without really knowing the facts. So this time there was video, and I don't know if you saw that video. There was like someone on the roof when those people were shooting.
Yeah, there was a bunch of them, and the main thing to me was, when the guy ran by and point blank hit the cop with the AK, it didn't look right because, theoretically, unless he's using a full metal jacket, that would have just made the guy's head pretty much explode. So it doesn't look right. Again, it doesn't smell right either. And a lot of the murmurs online, from reading different news sources, have been saying how, now France is going to go into fight ISIS and extremism. But before this event even took place, in fact, it was something like 20 hours before it, there was already an aircraft carrier on the way to the Gulf, and they're going to get involved, and they're going to do airstrikes against ISIS. And, of course, now there'll be no public backlash against that. So it's just a little too convenient. It doesn't smell right.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind that was basically swept under the rug a few months ago, I'm not sure if France is still there, but I mean, they were just recently going back into Mali, back into that North African country, which is a former colony of France, and they have natural resource interests there. And there is some extremist group that's kind of bubbling up down there in Mali, and France recently went in there, started bombing it out, sent troops in and stuff like that. So I mean, this is stuff. I mean, there's no telling how many people France recently killed in Mali. They probably killed a few thousand people, but that wasn't news. You know what I'm saying? France goes into Mali, bombs the place out, sends in jets, sends in troops, doesn't make any news. And then 10 guys get shot in France, and it's oh my God, the end of the world again. You know what I mean? So I mean, this stuff is just it shows such a hypocrisy in the media, man. Such a hypocrisy. And then
it's politicized immediately because now they're calling him out now. How Francois Hollande had went ahead and basically been caught arming ISIS through Turkey, and now he's going to go say this is Al Qaeda. I mean, it's just even people over there where they get just as big of a dose of brainwashing, albeit it's different in Europe, but even they, where life's been pretty idyllic and they haven't had a 9/11 yet there, something of that magnitude. I mean, this is going to resonate because this is a satirical website. They just put a ban on the full veil there, and it's really trying to inseminate a culture clash, and it's being done for political reasons. We saw France turn their back on Israel and recognize Palestine as a state. That's because there's such a huge Muslim population now that they have to appease that part of their, and it's the right thing to do anyway. So we're seeing a complete political upheaval right now, and they're trying to make a clash between cultures, but the greatest thing about it is regular people aren't buying into it because no one wants to go to war.
Yeah, I mean, there's a big... I was listening to some conservative talk radio earlier, and they had this guy on from the Union Tribune, which is the local San Diego. It's like our big newspaper. It just happens to be a more conservative type of newspaper. It's a neocon newspaper, more or less. They had this guy on there. He was like the editor, some kind of editor at UT, and he was talking about how this is an attack on democracy and stuff. But like you were saying, man, in France they've banned the people from wearing their clothing, man, their traditional clothing and stuff. So this is to me, I mean, of course, if a government's going to go and ban the clothing and stuff like that, I mean, like you said, it's probably just divide and conquer stuff that's going on within France, because they're trying to, quell the unrest that's going on over there. And Francois Holland, their prime minister, he's supposed to be some kind of reformist socialist guy, and he's come in and he's proved to be nothing but just another neocon, basically. Central banking, huge foreign policy, invading countries like Mali, stuff like that. So, this, we all know that the way that this is going to be played, what actually is going on over there, we don't know yet, right? But we all know how it's going to play out. It's going to be used for France's version of the Patriot Act. It's going to be used to expand their foreign policy. It's going to be used to undermine freedoms at home.
And they've already had, they pretty much already have an Orwellian kind of CCTV network over there. It's like London, but it's in Paris, and it's just as advanced. And how did these guys get away when there was cameras everywhere and there's even biometric stuff? And if I'm not mistaken, I believe one of the assailants might have dropped his identification there. Again, this is just getting to be where it's like following a formula that a lot of people kind of can see that formula now. And it doesn't look like what the media is telling us it is. It's totally bogus, and it just smells like fish.
So I want to invite the audience, anyone listening that wants to chime in on this, feel free to call in and tell us what you think about what's going on with France and whatever happened over there today. The number is 718-717-8296 if you want to call in and let us know what you think. So to me, like, one thing that really stood out is that, these guys are on this roof taking that video. That was like, it's like that guy taking that video was like pretty ballsy, man. You know what I mean? He's up there taking video, and these guys are blowing off AKs and stuff right there. That was pretty, pretty crazy footage that they actually have. So, that's one thing that really, stood out to me. The other thing, though, and we kind of got to this a little bit earlier, is this media reaction. It's been just this crazy frenzy. And they've been, it's basically a 24-hour news cycle now at this point. And it's really, the fear factor is really being ratcheted up once again. And it's like over and over and over we see this coming from the media, where it's like one boogeyman after another. They're trying to me, it's like these guys are trying to pummel us into submission by scaring the shit out of us every week. With another bogus boogeyman, whether it's Saddam Hussein, Bin Laden, ISIS, terrorists in France. They're just over and over, man. It's like end of the world thing. Like, don't be scared to walk out your front door because this is going to happen to you. And it's like, why are they doing this? Why is it over and over?
Well, I think they're pushing for total disarmament. A la the UK, because in France you can still own a firearm, and you can even still, I believe, concealed carry. And it's formulaic, man. It's they're going to cause something to happen, and then they're going to come in with some kind of plan as a savior, which it's going to be a plan no one in their right mind wants. But we take advantage of people's moment of weakness all the time. So imagine what happens when you're an agency that can create public opinion. You use it to follow a specific agenda, and the specific agenda has always been disarmament of the West. For whatever reason, we can come up with there's enemies inside the gates theory. We can come up with they want a complete dystopian Orwellian way that we can't resist at all. But you can be assured that anything that comes on the heels of this is not going to improve security at all. It'll probably make France a magnet for extremists now, because why would you not strike at the heart of the problem?
Yeah, I just think a lot of this stuff, to me, a lot of it is blowback, whether it's from them banning the clothing or from their foreign policy. And even though France is saying they're going to recognize the Palestinians as a state, they are still involved in a lot of the aid, I think, that goes over to Israel. So they just like any other country that's part of NATO, man, there's going to be blowback because of the stuff that we're doing. And like I was saying, it's like that stuff doesn't make news. You know, when France goes into Mali, it doesn't make news. When the U.S. goes into Libya and then Libya becomes what it's become, which is a failed state, how come that stuff isn't on the news? You know, and when they were trying to make the case for us to go in and start bombing Libya, that was on the news. And then when it after everything's said and done and the country's fallen into complete chaos, then nobody, it's not even newsworthy anymore. It's like, what the hell's going on? You know, but at the same time, when 12 people get killed by terrorists in France, everybody cares. You know what I'm saying? So it's like we need to like really address this uneven moral code. You know what I mean? So it's like, well, when ISIS beheads guys, that's horrible. But when Saudi Arabia beheads guys, that's okay. It's permissible. You know what I mean? That's the way our government like kind of looks at it. But we need to say enough with the do as I say, not as I do. If we're gonna have a moral code, then the government should be dealing with that code on an even basis. So like people like Saudi Arabia should be immediately cut off because of the atrocities that they commit against their own people, whether it's crushing freedom of speech, crushing democracy. I mean, it's a complete dictatorship. Why are we even working with those countries? While at the same time we go and invade countries like Iraq and Libya and Afghanistan, while at the same time working with dictators in Egypt. I mean, this is just insane. So what's going on is that they have this supposed moral code, but they don't ever actually follow it. They only follow it when it's convenient to their foreign policy or to their geopolitics.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And the more you read into the long game and what World War II is really about and what, all these experts and all these visionaries like Albert Pike had described with World War III trying to be a clash between, Zionism and Islam to, kind of finally allow these people to come out of the shadows and rule because they're going to be, a more logical step than government and a more logical step than religion. The next god is the state and statehood and global communism and a one world government. And this is it's baby steps towards it. Part of our biggest thing we can do is stave it off here. If America stands strong and continues to function as a republic, and in fact, if we can even refine the Constitution to be learned by the people, I think people now are starting to understand if they know the law, just even a cursory amount, they're already one up on these police that don't know it. They can get out of things. They can not have to comply with this basically commercial code fee system. That's all they are now. They're not really providing a service per se. They're really just making money for the city and for the state. So we're starting to see that. We're starting to see when we call them, they're 10 minutes away and the intruder's at the door. And we're going to basically start at that point, and it's going to be a local thing at every level. I think that's what's happening now. The backlash against the cops is not going to stop because they're people, man. They have to go to supermarkets. They have to pick up their kids from school. What if it gets to the point where it's an endemic and people just hate your profession, hate you just because they know who you are? They don't want it to get to that point, and nobody does.
Yeah, man, I agree. The backlash against the cops is just beginning. I've been seeing these stupid ads in my on Facebook, and they're trying to sell me these things that say "Breathe easy, don't break the law." It's like some cop supporting T-shirt sale thing. It's like this ad, and I clicked on it like a month ago, and it had like sold like 202 shirts, right? And then I clicked on it a month later, and it only sold like 220. You know what I mean? And these guys are wasting like a bunch of money, like spending money, like making ads for these shirts on Facebook. It's crazy. But I think any support that's going in, and like there was a few articles going around that were saying like, oh, support for police is like surging, like throughout the whole country and stuff. And I was like reading that, and I was like, oh my god, these guys are like blatantly lying. You know what I'm saying? And these all these conservative sites ran that article, and they were all saying that like the support for the cops was going up. But I think we all know that is completely false, right? So they're just basically throwing out these ideas, and they're just saying things, and they're not actually true, but they're just saying them to make people think that they are true. I mean, this is a big part of the way the media, industrial complex works. It kind of it can just make stuff up. It can just tell you that Mitt Romney is the most preferred Republican candidate. It can tell you that in 2016 we're going to see Hillary Clinton versus Jeb Bush. I mean, more and more, like day after day, it seems more and more likely.
I mean, but it won't, because there's no possible way Jeb Bush beats Marco Rubio. It's not going to happen. The state is overwhelmingly in that majority category with Latin voters. They're going to go for the dude. He has the family values ticket, and that's going to go far when with all this debauchery comes out and the CIA torture and now these underage sex rings and all these things are going to come out. They're all expedient for a political use by who knows, the CIA, whoever has that stuff. No one knows. So, but it's being released for whatever reason. It's always a political reason. And it's just let the games begin, man. It's just going to be a huge circus. There's also a lot of reports about, them prepping for an economic collapse or whatever they're prepping for. They're buying tons of supplies. They're getting rid of all of the U.S. government surplus gear. And we're going to be in for a wild ride here. My only hope is that, the good people prevail and we can get back to what we were supposed to be, 70 years ago when we got knocked off track.
Well, there was a recent poll from, I think, Gallup, and they asked people what their biggest concern was. And for the last, 4 or 5 years, it was the economy. But, this year, their biggest concern was the government, actually. And it was at, 19%. So, 19% of the population, actually, their biggest fear, and you got to remember, this is the polled population, too. These are probably older people that are much more conservative type of thinking. Even Democrats are, to me, Democrats are, very conservative as well. So it's even this poll is probably conservatively estimating these numbers at 19%. And so I think there's enough people that are really questioning, why things are the way they are, and especially now with this crazy police violence that's been exposed thanks to the use of technology and thanks to activists out there that are willing to get out there on the front lines and take the video and stand up to the cops and stuff. Well, the cops are just the face of the government, man, and so these poll numbers kind of correlate the fact that 19% of the people are pretty much fed up, and these are the people that are standing up against the cops. But these numbers are growing because things aren't really getting better. I mean, Wall Street is going through the roof. The only reason the economy is in this kind of fake upturn is because the stock market just keeps going up and up and up, and the oil prices keep going down, and the value of the dollar is going up. I mean, this is these are all signs of market manipulations. I mean, there's something wrong with this marketplace. It's not acting right. You know what I mean?
The only thing that really makes sense is if you look at how gold's moving and you look at how the dollar's moving. It's almost like it's backed again. Nobody knows it yet, and maybe there's going to be a change. And I've researched it, and there's supposed to be some kind of NAFTA type of currency that's actually going to have gold in it. They're going to put it into the bill. So we're going to see if they can pull some kind of thing where if Mexico collapses societally and they ask for us to annex them, I'm assuming that may happen, and it may happen to Cuba, and NAFTA may come to pass, and whether or not it's globalist or it's actually a republic becoming an economic bloc for security reasons and to continue not only the American lifestyle but spread it to our cousin countries, so to speak, I don't know. There's so many weird, crazy things going on, but you can see that the dollar, what they expected it to collapse, not actually the ruble's just about dead right now. And the only thing that makes sense is that somebody possibly made a deal where we joined BRICS, and now we're backed with gold. That's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Well, to me, it's to me, I think the market is pretty much controlled more or less in many ways, and the fact that the U.S. was willing to go in and fight in Syria and in Iraq again, and the fact that we've got all this like fracking going on and stuff, that adds like all this value into the dollar, right? And it's like flooding Wall Street because all these investors are like, okay, well, these guys are willing to go out and fight. You know, they're willing to fight for the petrodollar. Okay, we put a little faith in that. You know, and it's horrible the way that it's going on. I mean, the U.S. is literally economically being rewarded by going to bat against Russia and going to fight the geopolitical war in the Middle East, because then everyone knows that if the U.S. wins, then that ensures the life of the petrodollar. You know what I mean? So it's kind of a catch-22 for Americans, because that system is what's propping up the American like bubble lifestyle, right? Where everyone in America has like a slightly better lifestyle than people, higher standard of living or whatever than people in most other places. But
yeah, we're very inflated. I mean, if the average person here makes 42 grand, and the average person in the world makes about 9.
Yeah,
well, unfortunately, as soon as those derivatives start going downhill, like, you know, what's causing Chase to slowly and steady start to close down branches, that's when, unfortunately, as they say, the shit will hit the fan.
Yep, I think it already has. It's just it hasn't spread out yet because, well, let's be honest. Like, the great thing about America is we have so many different people that we're able to like kind of adjust the economy, and they can't really collapse it like they thought they'd be able to by now.
Yeah, no, at the very least, we're not as ignorant about certain situations as we were in 2008 when the economy first collapsed, and also just in case that Mexico would be desperate to the point that they would ask the U.S. to annex them. I highly doubt it at this point because of 2 reasons. One, the NAFTA, the obvious. For a country that pretty much here in the U.S. we help subsidize farmers, local business, etc. But in Mexico, when NAFTA first came by, they basically took those subsidies out and helped the foreign industries. In other words, the gringo enterprises to pretty much take over the industry in Mexico. And also, well, not to be racist about it, but pretty much there's a certain nationalistic pride that will obviously research within the Mexican people, which will obviously not allow them to annex the U.S., especially thanks to the Mexican-American War that ended up in 1848, which ended up with the U.S. winning more than half of, well, in other words, stealing half of what used to be Mexican territory.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think that I don't think there would ever be a like an Amero type of union, like a European Union, because I think Alberto's right. I mean, the people would just be like, you know, not really into it, because I think people know that going into a further centralized type of government is not the way to go. You know, and that's why I'm hopeful for Mexico, because I mean, I think they're going to have a revolution, and I think it's going to be pretty positive. I think they're going to take steps in the right direction. Will it be perfect? Of course not. I mean, nothing's ever perfect, but it can be better, though. It can be a lot better than what it is. You know what I mean? And then we can look at that as take that as an example, because looking at recent revolutions that have occurred around the world, it's not a very positive learning experience, because I mean, Egypt has been through 2 or 3 revolutions, and currently they've got a military dictatorship. You know what I mean? So it's like we have to be, really careful about these revolutionary ideas, because if they're done wrong, you can waste a huge amount of energy, of like the public energy, basically, that you need to do a successful revolution. Man, you got to change like hearts and minds like overnight, and you can only do that once every so often. So that's what's horrible about many of the revolutions from like the Arab Spring.
Well,
they didn't achieve what they didn't really achieve a revolutionary utopia like they had hoped.
Because they were violent revolutions. We gotta learn from the MLK Jr. days. They have to be non-violent resistance, and also Gandhi too. But pretty much the main thing that would cause basically a revolution from the inside out is basically, literally, and even though it will sound laughable, pretty much doing nothing. You don't even have to take the freeways to cause social anxiety. Literally doing nothing. Don't go to school, don't go to work, and don't go shopping. Literally, slowly and steadily, they're slowly gonna start paying attention.
Yeah, but I mean, you can only do that so long and like still be able to eat and stuff, and that's, I think, where the dilemma comes in for a lot of people that, a lot of people that are listening that are, activists, but also work and have families and have to support families and stuff. It's like, in this current system, if you don't work and do your thing in that way, then you can't really get by. You can't really get food and stuff unless you're in a very unique situation where you're like completely off the grid. But there's not that many people that are in that situation. And ideally, ideally, like people, I think it's a good idea to be off the grid. But realistically, it'd be pretty tough, especially in the big, metropolis type of areas, like here in Southern California or in the Northeast.
Well, look what they're doing in Florida, where they're making it illegal.
What do you mean? What are they making illegal?
There was a lady who was fined for being, off grid, and they made her reconnect so that she could give her excess power back to the grid. I mean, and it's going to get to that point. There's already right now the Koch brothers trying to push legislation through, and it would essentially fine you because you're not buying power, which is meaning that they need you to pay for the infrastructure for the actual grid itself, even if you don't use power running through those lines.
Yeah, it's almost like when they built those utility monopolies that it was attached to your social security number or something. It's like, oh well, we expected you to pay for all this stuff, so you're gonna have to go ahead and pay for it. So this is these monopolistic ideas, but in these metropolis areas, it'd be pretty tough. I've got a bunch of friends that are off the grid, but I mean most of them are in the country or in the woods or something like that, Indian reservations and places like that. But in the city, man, I think we need to go more of a and if you notice, like if you look at any of like the conservative states, right? But like in the big cities, it's pretty liberal or whatever. So I mean, the idea is that like when you're in the big cities, you're much more of you've got to live in a much more of a collectivist type of mind state because you can't be completely self-reliant because you're in an unlimited amount of space. You're in a small amount of space, a high cost, and all that stuff. So you can't expect to live in downtown Los Angeles and have a farm at your place. You can't really do that. So we need to come up with ideas that can kind of help out these big cities, and I think maybe something like land cooperatives and stuff like that, where like they have like farms growing out in the country that like a bunch of people from the city pitch in to operate, and then it brings all their food in and stuff like that. Because we have to go around the current system if we ever hope to like bring the system down. If we're gonna do it non-violently, well then you have to do it disrupting. You have to do disruptful economics, and you have to use counter economics and black market economics to kind of cut the system out. Because anytime you use the system to get your food or to get your water, to get your fuel or your energy, you're always paying taxes on that, and that's what makes the state run. You know what I mean? So if we're going to do a nonviolent, kind of movement, you have to make it hurt in other ways, and I think financially is the way to do it. You heard.
Well, what if everything that's important is automated, or all the important VIPs already are making tons of money, and there's a lot of people doing redundant type of jobs. Now they see us as cattle or like useless people, but let's be honest, if we don't have free higher education, how do we even know what people are capable of? So it's a waste of the human resource right now, and it's pretty obvious what's going on. And it could be turned around. I mean, in Europe, they've forever given people cheap or free college if even if they're not from there, as long as they're talented enough to do it. And we need to get to that point where everybody's strengths are used, or else we're going to have a lot of collateral, and that's kind of a crazy idea.
Yeah, I mean, in I've been to a few countries where they don't really have education. Like, so of course here in the U.S. we have the U.S. education system, which is pretty messed up, right? But at the same time, it's at least something in a way that it provides some form of academic, education. A lot of it is brainwashing. A lot of it is messed up, the way that they run the schools and the way a lot of that stuff is messed up, right? But
well, it depends on the ideology you're taught with, because it's not the same thing being taught in New York or California as you're being taught in Texas or, oh, God save us all, Alabama or Mississippi.
Well, Texas is where all the textbooks are actually. The original textbook, like, template starts there, and then it gets pushed out, which is why you're starting to see a lot of creationism creep into, like, biology textbooks. And all it's doing is serving to confuse people. There's faith, and then there's science. And, you can mix them, but, I mean, damn, kids already have a hard enough time with just science.
yeah,
well, I'm not really talking about creations. I mean about just like they said, if you don't remember your past, you're doomed to repeat it. I guess that's a main thing, because I don't know how, although they might, although I have no clue how they will be able to gerrymander the math and learning math, English, and at least the basic education.
Yeah, so, we have this education system here that's not that great, or, whatever. There's some bright spots and there's some pretty sad spots, and a lot of the poor communities have worse schools. And I know I went to one of the school systems in a poor area, and it sucks. You don't really learn much in high school. It's just like pretty much, not very much educating, and mostly just getting fed into the system, right? But
the world was much better. We had a whole lot more Jaime Escalantes in a whole lot of schools.
There's plenty of countries out there that don't provide any type of education at all to the people, and it kind of, in a way, sometimes it creates a permanent underclass, man. But now, in this new age of communication, I guess there's pretty much no reason why someone couldn't get an education on the internet, no matter where they are in the world, for very, very cheap. So I think this is what's going to change everything, because now there's going to be a bunch of people that in the past, they're like very extremely intelligent people that were completely under, they never reached their full potential because they were held back by a bunch of different circumstances. But now the internet is going to start unlocking these geniuses that were never able to flourish before, and they're going to be able to be unlocked by the internet. And they're going to be able to get an education online by connecting to the internet. And these are the people that are going to probably save us, man. It's going to be all these people that are able to start connecting in the third world, and they're going to find the solutions that are going to fix everything, I think. Because all of us here in the West, like, all of our ideas seem to be like so played out. Like, everything that people try to talk about here in the West, it's like, yeah, that sounds pretty good, but let's face it, it would turn into the same old shit, and
corrupted.
And that's kind of this mentality that's been going around. It's like, dude, like, everybody wants to talk about politics and ideologies and stuff like that. It's like, dude, it's all basically the same shit, man. And that's been the problem, is we need to come up with a whole new
because it's always a defense of government instead of moving to self-governance, which we're getting to the point where the technology is going to almost allow that. The one thing that's going to truly, truly allow that, which could be used in a horrible way or a fantastic way, is robotics. So, for instance, imagine that you accumulate, I don't know, $100,000 in cash from saving up over 10, 20, 30 years, and you buy a robot. And that robot now does all of your blue-collar stuff, period. And you program him, and he'll last your whole lifetime. What does that do? Freeing up your time capital. How is that going to change the whole world when, you need some fuel? Go cut down a tree, robot. You know, it's going to change things to a crazy level, and I think that's kind of what they're gearing up towards with all these drones and everything. Is they want to keep a lid on all this stuff, and how can you?
Oh, why was I programmed to feel pain? Well, anyway, so back to revolution. Pretty much. Well, I know basically that overnight it cannot be done. Pretty much shutting down the malls, not going to school, not going to work, etc. But basically do it just at least one step at a time. Like back in '06 when they tried to approve HR 4437, which was even to the point of being so surreal that even helping out an undocumented immigrant would just be pretty much you ending up in the slammer, literally. And pretty much the people stood up and to such a point that at least the proposal died in the Senate. And also they had like a day without a Mexican based on the movie, pretty much, which the same name, where they literally didn't go to work, didn't go to school, and didn't shop, pretty much. But at the very least, I know it cannot be done daily, but at the very least once a week. So at least slowly and steadily start wearing down this immovable titan per se. And
I think DB kind of hit it like perfectly where any revolution should always be moving towards decentralization, and I think most of them do. Right, most revolutions are like, oh, we need to take power away from these few oligarchs and give it back to the people. But most of the time they're like, okay, so we're going to set up a republic where we vote for a few oligarchs, and then it's like the same thing. So decentralization of if people are talking about revolution, that's the way to go. But it has to be in the revolution's DNA. Like decentralization has to be in the DNA of the revolution, man. It has to be very, very, very important. And just like in the U.S., how it started off more of like a federalistic type of republic, over time it became what it is now, a very centralized, very strong federal government, and then the states are pretty much weak to do anything. Like here in California, how long has marijuana been legal for medical use, and how long have the feds been raiding our dispensaries? It's been like 15 years or something like that, man. It's been like 10 years. So, the states have become watered down, but like the initial idea was that, okay, well, we're going to make it like all about the states and all that stuff. And all of that stuff actually changed after Abraham Lincoln, and of course Abraham Lincoln did some great things by freeing the slaves and ending slavery. But at the same time, he also laid some other framework that allowed the country to become what it's become now, which is this strong, very, very strong federal government and very watered down states, very weak states. Even though a few of the states like California and New York make up for a huge portion of the country. I mean, the federal government still overrules basically all of our laws whenever the hell they want to. And that's just, the proof is that they've been raiding the dispensaries, man. All these things are completely legal by state law, and the federal government comes in and raids them. So, these guys aren't playing by the rules that were set out for them to play by, while at the same time they use their authority, their supposed authority, to twist the rules to punish the shit out of all the people and to basically suck us dry. And that's what brings us back to this whole NYPD quasi-rebellion that's been going on in New York. How the cops have decided that they're going to stop doing a lot of the petty crime, not giving tickets for people that are doing parking violations. They're not going to arrest people for having a beer on the streets and stuff like that, petty stuff. And a lot of these corporate media outlets have even admitted to, they're like, well, they're trying to punish the city by cutting off their revenue stream. And then it was something like almost $1 billion. It was like $700 million were raised by these tickets in 2014. Almost like over $500 million are raised by these tickets. So this is a total revenue generation stream, and that's what the NYPD is trying to do, is cut them off from their revenues to try to punish them and let them know. They're not telling the people, they're not telling us that we need them. They're not trying to say, oh yeah, if we stop patrolling, then you're going to have a bunch of crime. That's not what they're even trying to say. What they're trying to say is that, hey, if we stop patrolling, you guys are going to go broke. And by you guys, I mean the government. And so this is a crazy dynamic that I think is developing here. And by all means, I mean, as crazy as this sounds, I think the NYPD by not doing these patrols is actually aiding us in a way. It's helping us.
Yeah, at the very least, in a way, the real headline should be pretty much that NYPD pretty much inadvertently makes itself obsolete. At the very least, they know pretty much that the people in New York are not as the same thing as pretty much in 20 or 30 years ago. It's basically a liberal bastion, per se. Pretty much, they're not gonna pretty much commit violent crimes in every corner. And also, speaking of getting fines and revenue for the city, well, like basically the thing is, if they got more help from federal budgets, which I know perfectly well the Congress it will not do, the way it's composed now even further. Oh, undoubtedly things I know they're gonna get worse. And also, speaking of the changes that Abraham Lincoln did, that when you were talking about pretty much that not only that he freed the slaves but also opened the doors for these other things to happen, you're obviously talking about the original 13th Amendment that pretty much as we know it today, since when Abraham Lincoln that emancipated the African Americans and abolished slavery, but originally it was something about monetary deals with Great Britain and etc.
Yeah, what it did was it monetized. It basically put everybody in capital letters for the first letters of your first name and last name, and under the commercial code, it made you into you were able to be bets were placed on your productivity and your lifespan and everything by demographic, any way you could imagine. It made like a new Vegas of human labor, and that's why America is still known as the plantation in some countries, because that's what we started out as. We started out as a company. We still are that, and that's what the Civil War was about. When the Union beat the Confederacy, yeah, it took slavery away. That was the good thing. The bad thing was it made everybody kind of like this debt slave, where they started trading on stuff whether or not you did it and racking up debt on your behalf when you had no say in it.
Yeah, pretty much where we used to be a plantation of tobacco, now we're a plantation of GMO crops. And also, pretty much speaking about illegalizing weed, etc., something interesting just found out a few days ago that there's going to be some sort of marijuana dispensary opening up in my home turf of San Isidro, which will be close to the Chamber of Commerce offices. And I know there's people that are starting to rile up against it, considering that even though it's still even though they vote Democrat, they're still in social issues quite very conservative. But well, to put it in a different perspective, like in the case of Ayotzinapa Guerrero, that unfortunately the 43 students were pretty much held over from the police and then turned over to the cartels to be burned alive. Well, pretty much hit them where it hurts, like in the case of prohibition back almost 100 years ago. Legalize the drugs, but also not to such a point that to such a drastic way, like here you go, have at it, hustlers. Not legalize and pretty much in intellectually in-line the people who pretty much have that hopefully if they are given a reasonable arguments, they will not be so narrow-minded, but at least they will understand the issue.
Yeah, a lot of the the drug arrests in New York have gone way down. And what we're not seeing is some kind of heroin epidemic going on or any kind of rampant drug use, that's exploding or anything now that the cops aren't like arresting people for it. All we're seeing is just the amount of people having to pay a bunch of money to the quote unquote justice system and having to go into jail cells for using drugs. That's just not happening anymore as of this point in New York, and I think that's a good thing. I think the NYPD should stay not doing that because they shouldn't be doing that. And then I mean, the problem is that if you think about the size of the NYPD, I mean, they're in the tens of thousands. I think they're like 30,000+ people that work,
35,000.
yeah, that work in the NYPD. All those guys got to make a paycheck, and they're all part of these unions. They all have pensions. They all have, they're all stuck in the same derivative situation that pretty much everyone else is facing. And if they don't write all these tickets, and like I said, they made 500+ million last year in tickets.
And the union gets blackmailed for their pensions. Whenever Wall Street starts feeling uncomfortable, guess who's the first person they complain to? If we're not making profits, your guys' retirements aren't either.
Yeah, so these guys are they gotta make their money somehow. So that's how they do it, is writing all these checks, and so it makes their paycheck, and it helps pay all these bureaucrats costs and all these other things that these guys do. Who knows what with that money? And
I just wish they could change the trend like Rafael Correa did in Ecuador. He increased the salaries and reformed the police training in his country, which which in other words, the only people that kept loyal to the corruption were the main heads that apparently were getting their salaries from the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah, man. I mean, it just goes on and on, right? There's just so many. These guys are just so corrupt that it's just, where does it stop? I kind of want to close out this show with a little bit of what's going on here with this fracking situation, more or less. There was 11 earthquakes in Texas in 27 hours, I guess. Wow, and then there were 77 earthquakes in Ohio, including one that was big enough to be felt. And it's been blamed on fracking, and they actually conducted a study finally on this, and it was published on Tuesday in the Bulletin of Seismological Society of America. And I mean, they're basically saying, yeah, the earthquaking is due to the fracking. So the fact of the matter is the fracking is still going on. So I mean, I don't know if they're just going to say, okay, well, kind of like these FDA approved drugs. It's like, well, here's the side effects, So we got the fracking, but the side effect is, okay, well, there's going to be
gassy water.
There's going to be earthquakes. Your water may be filled with gas. Your water may be flammable. It may dry up your water table. I mean, these are all these side effects, but apparently, as of right now, it's worth it. According to whatever makes all this stuff happen, makes it legal, and it's happening. But that also brings us to this whole Keystone Pipeline thing, and of course the Republicans immediately pick up the Keystone Pipeline and run with it because I mean, it's just this Keystone Pipeline thing is just like the dumbest thing ever at this point because first of all, it's taking land from a bunch of people, and the funny part is that the conservatives are normally the ones that are like believing in property rights and stuff like that, and it's just like, oh well, in this situation, who cares? Just take the land from people, and
it's a critical parasite. What do you expect from the GOP?
Yeah, man. I actually at one of the that time when Obama came to San Diego and there was a bunch of protesters out there and we went out there. I talked to a guy there that had like they had a banner telling Obama to pass the Keystone Pipeline legislation, and I was asking him about the property rights stuff, and he's like, "Yeah, I believe in property rights." I'm like, "Well, do you know that they're taking property from people?" And he was just like, "Yeah, well, sometimes you got to do that. That's how the railroads were made and stuff." And I'm like, "Yeah, but you also know that the railroads went bankrupt, So, and then he was like, yeah, but the guys, I swear, he was like, I don't care, I still want the Keystone Pipeline. I'm like, all right, dude, I mean, whatever. But, it's just,
sounds pretty informed.
Yeah, it's become a very left-right, the very unintellectual left and right issues, is this whole Keystone Pipeline. I mean, it's like, it should be a non-issue. You shouldn't be able to just take land from people to build some kind of pipeline. But, the thing is that at this point in time, I mean, the gas prices, the oil for a barrel of gas and all that stuff has gone so low that like building the Keystone Pipeline would be a disaster at this point in time, because you would be flooding the markets even more with more oil, and it's to me it would actually probably be a job killer, and it would just suck a bunch of money, and the fact that this thing has to go through Congress and stuff, that the government is probably is on the hook for some portion of this thing. So I mean, it's just a horrible idea. And the funny thing is that Obama says that he's going to veto this thing, and hopefully he does. But he's probably vetoed
from that guy that pretty much pitched to approve the omnibus bill that pretty much gave the bank pretty much unlimited power to gamble with the money of the savers. Is Obama really a guy we can trust?
Yep, that's what it did. It repealed the Frank Dodd Act.
Yeah, of course, Obama is definitely not someone we can trust, and that's what I was going to say. Is that I think he's saying he's going to veto the pipeline, but I don't think he's doing it for the right reasons. But I mean, what do I know as far as what he's thinking? But that's what I'm guessing. I mean, the other thing is that we need to start moving away from all these, fossil fuels that need to be mined out of certain places, and transition over to decentralized energy production, because otherwise we remain stuck in the system if we keep buying off the same old grid, and that's the dilemma. I mean, people out in rural areas can easily go off the grid, get solar panels and all that stuff. But people in the city, it's a lot different, man. Like, and that's why people need to make these like energy cooperatives and like food cooperatives and stuff like that, to try to cut out the whole corporate revenue stream, because the corporate pay a lot of taxes, man, on the sales taxes and all that stuff. So by cutting that out, you're cutting out a part of the machine. But now the other thing is that we need to figure out ways to do transactions that aren't being, where every transaction is not being taxed, and that's why people need to do more barter type of transactions. Doesn't exactly have to be a barter for, I give you a wheelbarrow, you give me a bale of hay. It can be more of like, I give you so many Bitcoin, you give me so many something else. These are still barter type of situations. So I mean, that's another way of working around the system, and to me, I think that is like the strategy that is the best way to go about, bringing about positive changes.
Yeah. Also, before we end the show, I'd like to give a quick plug for this Saturday at 2 o'clock we'll march, but we'll start gathering a little past 1 p.m. pretty much, et cetera, et cetera. We're going to have a march a local march for the 43 missing and presumed dead students of Ayotzinapa, Guerrero, at Larsen Park, also known as Larsen Field, also known as Cesar Chavez Park. If you could join us from the nearby areas, whether it's San Diego, LA, Imperial County, or whatever, we'll greatly appreciate it. This Saturday we'll start coming by 1, but pretty much we'll march by 2 o'clock from Larsen Field, a.k.a. Cesar Chavez Park in San Isidro. Thank you very much.
Cool, man. Yeah, he's talking about the students that were basically killed by the Mexican industrial complex. I don't even know what to call it. I don't want to call it the government or the cartels. I mean, it's like a mix. Anyway, these are the things government does. All around the world, we gotta figure out a way around it. Thank you guys for listening. Catch you tomorrow, 5 days a week.
Look me up Facebook and Twitter, 314 Love Machine. Bye, everybody.
I'ma let 'em know through the stereo. Yo, here we go through the stereo.